Welcome to the live, guys. I'm so excited because it's Saturday, and Saturday mornings, in the States at least, means that we have Melanie Murphy, the registered dietitian and holistic nutritionist. She is amazing, and she's going to answer your questions today about keto. Like, a lot of you guys are very confused about the ketogenic diet. Melanie, you can find her on Instagram at Health and Wellness, and her website also has go live, yes, and her website is nardi.com. So she's just popping in right now. Melanie, where are you? It's connecting. There you are. Hey.
Hello. How's it going?
Good.
Cross-country live chats.
Yes, we're in Spain and you're in LA. And it's
Yes.
amazing we can do this, right?
I know. Love technology.
Yeah, I just did an introduction for you so people know who you are, how to find
Hi, everybody.
and if they,
Yes.
if they have any questions, yes, they know how to find you. So today, we've had already a couple of chats, and I think they've been very, very informative. So I'm really grateful that you're coming on again and sharing all your amazing knowledge.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Today, we're going to talk about keto because you and I were talking a little bit, and it seems like a lot of people are confused. Farah, even down there, I had a little chat with her, and we were, it's so common what happens with a lot of my clients is that they say they're on a keto, and in fact, it's not keto. It's not keto at all, or it's kind of a modified keto. Like, maybe you can explain to us what does it mean to be keto? Because it seems like there's a whole range out there.
There is a range of, there are stages of ketosis for sure. So the keto diet was actually, the history of it is interesting because it was originally meant for the treatment of people with epilepsy, because what happens is when your body, if it's not using glucose, and this is just a quick science lesson, if your body is not using glucose as its primary form of energy, it will start breaking down your body fat. And when your body fat is the primary source of fuel, then we start creating what's called ketone bodies in our system. And that's what our body is using for fuel. And especially it's the only type of nutrient outside of glucose that can actually bypass the blood-brain barrier. So it gets to your brain really quickly, which is why it's really helpful for people in managing symptoms of like seizures is an issue that people with epilepsy experience, and ketone bodies can help actually go into the brain. So that's why it was originally created. In today's day and age, I think, people are really interested in the keto diet because, obesity is on the rise, and it's a really quick way. If you do it correctly, it's a quick way to actually burn the fat in your body and not, just lose fluid, for instance, or muscle mass. So people are really, and also there's this element of the keto diet that I think people really enjoy, where they, have reduced sugar cravings, reduced appetite. So all of these kind of, these are all different benefits of that people really are drawn to with the keto diet.
Just to let you guys who are watching now, if you have questions, really type them in the comments below and we will answer them. I've got a list of other people's questions, but so just take note of that. So if you see any questions, let's get back to them. The keto diet, though, a lot of people ask me, what is the difference between keto and paleo? I think they're a little confused.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get a little specific on what does it mean to be keto versus paleo.
Sure. The keto diet, it's really a difference between how we perceive the macronutrients. So in a keto diet, you are eliminating entirely the carbohydrate category. So if you guys remember, I think we talked about this a couple of times before, but there are 3 macronutrients. We have protein, we have fat, and we have carbohydrate. Keto diet eliminates the carbohydrate category almost entirely. So it's a play with those 3 macronutrients that is involved. For the paleo diet, that's really a diet that was formulated under this theory that because back in our caveman days that we had less disease, which we'll talk about that next week. But so we should eat more like our, caveman ancestors did. And that just tends to be higher in protein and lower in carbohydrate. But there isn't an elimination necessarily of any macronutrient category. You're still eating some carbohydrates, some, protein and fat in not, you can decide what the macronutrient
balance will be.
Categories are, where they're coming from and the how you're eating them. It does significantly reduce sugar and processed foods, which is one of the main overlaps of keto and paleo, is that because they're so significantly reduced in sugar and processed foods, it tends to be higher in these other categories. But they are different in that way. Because it's not, keto is extremely high in fat specifically.
And is it low in protein as well, isn't it? A lower protein.
The keto diet?
Higher fat. The keto diet, yeah.
You can eat higher proteins, and a lot of people, I think this is a really good question that you bring up, because this is one of the things that people tend to get confused by. People think that on keto that you're supposed to be eating a crap load of animal proteins and protein. That's not necessarily the case. It's also not the case that you can't have protein, because you can have protein on a keto diet for sure. I imagine most people actually tend to be higher in the protein category than the fat, which is where the ratios tend to, that was the word I was trying to go for earlier, ratios. The ratios tend to be a little bit wonky. But yeah, the keto diet is very, very high in fat, very low in carbohydrate, if any, and then, moderate protein intake. But people do tend to, the common mistake that I see with patients is people tend to overdo the protein, really significantly underdo the fiber, which is a huge problem with people that do not follow the keto diet appropriately, can cause constipation, all sorts of digestive problems. But yeah, I have my own personal opinions about both. But we can, I'm sure that'll come out once we start answering these questions.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So let's be a little bit more specific. When you say keto, let's say a strict keto diet, somebody wants to get in ketosis, does it have to be strict? And if so, is it 80% fat and 20% protein, or is it 70-30 and then 1% carbs? Or what is the ratio?
Yeah, the ratios will be different depending on the person, and the timeline of getting into ketosis depends on the person too, and depends on their age. Age is a big critical component in that too, but it would be predominantly fat. We're talking 60-70% fat. I think the ratio of protein, I've seen people go to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. I think that's far too much unless you have an actual chronic condition. I would say, if we're comparing this to the longevity diet, which is very, very low protein, it's still pretty high. I would say that the people that follow the keto diet would range between 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And that's still incredibly high.
That's high, yeah. So
it is high.
Yeah, but I guess if everybody goes into ketosis differently at different rates, then how do you know? So if somebody can go into ketosis with having more carbs, then I think they'd be pretty happy. But how do they know?
So one thing that I want to point out, there are different levels of ketosis. So I think it's between 0.5 and 1 point, or maybe even 2.0 millimoles of ketone bodies in your blood would be considered nutritional ketosis. So that actually,
What does that mean, nutritional ketosis?
that's actually fairly low. Yeah, so nutritional ketosis is actually been correlated with longevity diet also. So if you can be in a low level of ketosis, which still means that you're in a fat burning mode, but being in a low level of ketosis means that you're eating more carbohydrates, but still low enough that you're in a ketogenic state. The less carbohydrates you have, the higher state of ketosis that you're in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the higher level of ketosis that you're in, the more health benefits. They're not necessarily correlated. So actually, there is benefit to being in a nutritional state of ketosis, which is a lower state of ketosis. And that's been attributed to the longevity diet that we've talked about before. But a lot of people, I think the optimal state of ketosis is between, I want to say like, I have to get the actual, I'm sure I have it somewhere. The optimal state of ketosis is like up to 3 millimoles. Anything over 3 is really just unnecessary. There's diminishing returns after about 3. So that being said, you can measure it. You can physically measure it by taking your, there's breath tests that you can take to measure your ketone bodies. You can take urine analysis, which actually will give you the colors. So the different colors of your measuring your ketone bodies in your urine will tell you which state of ketosis you're in. And that might vary depending on the day.
Is it very accurate?
So it's a good question. Urinalysis is the last stage. When you start to urinate, there could be variability, obviously, because you know what you currently just ate. But by the time it gets into your urine, it's, I would say a few hours past that, but it will give you a general state, especially if you're taking it at certain, like maybe you take it in the morning, afternoon, at night, you can get your range, and and it's a fairly cheap way to do that. The only way to get immediate results is to do a blood test, but that's also not as readily available to people. But there are certain, when you're just starting a keto diet, there are certain physical symptomology that you will likely have that can kind of give you a sense of whether or not you're on the right track. Like a lot of people, when they're switching from burning glucose to burning fat, they end up having bad breath is a really common one. Sometimes switching over from the carbohydrate to fat burning mode, you also get really fatigued and you might have some body aches, and that switch can be, something that I'm definitely here. You do get over like those humps for sure.
Is that the carb flu?
Yeah, I've heard that term before. Yeah. And that's part of it. And a lot of that, to be honest with you, is the flushing out. For most people, it's the flushing out of like simple sugars and processed foods and things like that. And that release of toxic load into out of your system will cause that type of feeling of illness, if you will. But it does go away.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I would definitely suggest whatever, those urine strips, I know that they're a little bit delayed, but if you take a couple tests throughout your day, it will give you a fairly accurate read. But I think that that's a fairly good way to do it if you're not trying to be like mega, warrior about it. You can still reach your goals by doing a urinalysis test or a breath test.
Let's answer Juanestro's question. Yes, do I need to count calories on a keto diet?
Not necessarily. You're counting macros. You're counting your macronutrients. I would count calories because, well, I'll get to my opinion in a second. I would count I would be careful about your calories on a keto diet because it is so high in fat, which is fat is a much denser form of energy. So it tends to be higher in calories. And there is, there is an element of eating too many calories in a day to be, that there's a fine line. It's all a natural balance, but it's not about calorie counting. It's about macronutrient counting. So, I would say that's, it's not,
Counting
the simple
macros,
answer is no, not necessarily.
Yeah,
Right.
so let me share with you some of the experiences of my clients. And these are mostly women over the age of 40 who decide to go on the keto diet to lose weight. They wanted to try it. So the longest they would last probably is about 2 weeks, and they got really sick of it, and they had a really hard time. And they missed their vegetables and fruit. And they got really sick of eating so much fat because they were really packing it in, whereas before they were probably on a, most likely on a low fat diet. So I think part of it is psychological, and part of it was, they're reacting physiologically like, ugh, this is just so much fat. Although they had results, in the end they could see the marker moving, they just didn't find it very sustainable. So what are your thoughts on that, and just in terms of losing weight? Because I think people want to try to get on most people I think I know go on keto diets to lose weight, to burn fat, to get in that fat burning mode. And, I would like to know what you think.
This is a good cue up to actually giving my official opinion here. So I really do want to see, I do want to address your point about the actual cravings and kind of the longevity of it. I'm going to implant a thought into your brain that is actually a proven thought. If you eliminate, we need all 3 macronutrients. If you eliminate any of them, if you eliminate fat entirely, if you eliminate carbohydrates entirely, if you eliminate protein entirely, you will lose weight. Doesn't matter. If you, so the problem is, so think about that. If you eliminated, you decided today, I'm going to eliminate proteins as an entire category, you will have weight loss. It's how it
Why?
goes.
Because you're eating fewer calories? Or what's happened? If you're eating the same amount of calories, even if you eliminate that category, you would lose weight?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing. It's a matter of how comfortable it is for people. This is why I don't recommend any sort of like overarching, elimination of any particular macronutrient, because we need all of them. And to come to your point about, they miss their veggies, you should be eating vegetables on a keto diet. That's one of the most important parts about it. You need your fiber, and there's tons of vegetables that are not high in carbohydrates. Obviously, if you're being super strict about it, you'd want to like do your research on what, how many specifically carbohydrates are in each vegetable, but not eating veggies is a huge disadvantage for people on keto diet. And it can cause so many, issues that are way worse than the weight gain, in my opinion, like digestive issues. It can cause so many problems. Constipation is a microbiome issues is a whole problem.
That was one of the questions. One of our viewers were asking is, she says, why am I constipated when I do keto? This can't be a good thing. So what would you recommend if somebody's,
it's not, I would recommend adding vegetables at every meal. And there's like green beans, asparagus, artichoke, tomatoes, cauliflower, broccoli, all of cucumbers, zucchini, all of these are low carb vegetables that you should be eating on a daily basis. And also, from a gut microbiome standpoint, we need to be feeding our gut with the healthy bacteria, which are found, partially found in the vegetables we eat, or the prebiotics are found in the vegetables we eat. So if we're not eating them, we're not going to have a diverse microbiome, which is also a problem for our digestive health. So yeah, a lot of people on keto diet, they're like, I can only eat oils, I can only eat animal protein, I can only eat avocados and fat. That's not the case. And you need to be, if you're going for a very, if you're going for such a strict diet like keto can be, you need to be very, very well educated and diverse in what you're eating and the foods that you're choosing to eat. It's not just, oh, I'm going to eat a steak. Because that's the other thing too, is that eating, a really, really high animal, a diet really, really high in animal fats and proteins, that can cause kidney problems. The keto diet, as a dietitian, one of my main concerns about the keto diet is its effect on the gallbladder. And females especially tend to have, they're more susceptible to having gallbladder issues, especially the older that you get. So I'm very, very careful and wary about how we get to it. If you want to try to get to a nutritional ketosis state, which is the lower end, I would highly suggest we do it together and figure out the healthy way to do that for you, and making sure that we have the other micronutrients that you need. And also you brought up a really interesting point about the carbohydrate, for your, some of the people that you coach. Females especially, not only are we more susceptible to having, some gallbladder issues, which is, something to be very, very wary of on a keto diet for anybody. But females, the way that our hormones work, our physiology need more carbohydrates than men in general for our hormones to function properly. And when you're over, I think you said that you're a lot of people you coach are over 40, right? Is that what you said? Yeah. And after over 40, you're entering into a state of your life where your hormones are changing. And we need extra support from the carbohydrates. So I can appreciate the keto diet for launching people, especially if people are like, I need to just get a kickstart. Use the keto diet as like a platform to kickstart your journey, but it's not a long-term solution at all. And I wouldn't recommend it be a long-term solution for most people.
Yeah. I just don't see it. Yeah. It's quite not, it doesn't seem sustainable unless you're able to find that balance, or maybe like a modified keto is what seems to work better for my clients. Yes. And there are some berries and things like that are allowed, again, if you're going for that moderate ketogenic state. And that's something that I would highly recommend. We can chat too about this for if you have any individual patients that we're working with, but there are ways that, like I said, that nutritional state, which is the lower level of ketosis, that's actually been linked in the longevity diet to be a fairly good place to just live in general. So but the farther into the ketogenic state, the harder it is to sustain, and also the harder it is on our digestive organs, like our kidney and gallbladder, and also just in general, like how I agree with your patients. It's hard as hell to not, carbohydrates, generally speaking, make up the bulk of our diet and our plates, right? So it's a very, very challenging thing to do. I agree. And I have to say, the books that I've read on keto diets and the doctors and researchers who I've been reading about or listening to on podcasts, even though they themselves are promoting and they love the keto diet, they themselves only do it intermittently. They seem to be like, this is not a sustainable thing. They would do it maybe 3-4 times a year, or sometimes do it for a week, some do it for a month. It never seems to me something that even they, people who are really, really into this would even do themselves long term. So it's like you said, maybe a jump start or a clearing out. So I think that's a lot of people miss that point.
Yeah. And also, it kind of goes to, we've talked about fasting and Prolon, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. And that's part of it too. When you give your body a second to switch course for a minute, it is linked to some health benefits. And that's what happens when you're in a fasting mode, is that you do switch over to a ketosis and a ketogenic state. So there are benefits of doing it. I would say if you're listening loud and clear, it's not a long-term solution, especially the more intense the further into the ketogenic state you get, the harder it is to sustain and the harder it is on your organs. So doing it for a short period of time is probably great. Maybe do it once a quarter, or depending on what your health goals are. But we actually physically need carbohydrate.
When you say do it for a short term, what are you talking about? A week, a month, 10 days? What is it that you would recommend?
That's a good question. It takes a minute for your body to get into a ketogenic state, especially if you're doing it outside of fasting. And that depends, which is why you will need to like monitor your own body, because there's not like by day 3 you're in it. That's not how it goes. It depends it's by person. And I would say, I wouldn't do it longer than a couple months. If you're doing if you're doing the keto diet, I would not do it more. I would say 3 months is the cutoff mark for me as a dietitian. That's what I would say. You could do it for a month and have pretty great results. And the one really great part about, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear what you finish what you say.
I was just gonna say that one of the really great parts about, especially in America, we have a lot of visceral fat, which is the fat that's around our organs and around our midsection. That's the most dangerous kind of fat to have. To have fatty organs is a really dangerous place to be. So the keto diet, if you're in a ketogenic state, that's usually where the fat comes from, the fuel that we use for energy comes from, which is actually, under supervision, I think that there are really great benefits to the keto diet when done in a well-rounded, balanced way. But yes, the end piece of that is that for anybody, it's not a long-term solution.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I want to ask, there's a couple of questions. I'll just ask you one question. If you guys have a question, type it in the comments now, or we'll get notified after the replay and answer your questions later. But Juan Estro asked, how often should I do intermittent fasting and for how long? I think you're going to have to go watch the replay of the other ones.
Yeah.
And I'll have to post that, because we already talked about intermittent fasting. And then next week, we're going to talk about the paleo. But one last question that I had on my list was, someone had asked, do you have any tips for vegans doing keto?
Yeah, you can do keto as a vegan. Actually would venture to say it's a little bit of a healthier option, because you're not inundating your body with all those intense animal proteins, which is which has its own health problems with it when we eat too much of those. I would say you're gonna have to stick to a lot of like coconut oils, olive oils as your fats. Even avocados are a great source of the fats for vegans. Nuts and seeds and nut butters and things like that, I would say you could go to. You do have to, just like the vegetables, you have to be, if you're being super strict about it, you should go back and just like cashews and things like that would have more carbohydrates, for instance, than like say an almond would. So you'd have to go back and do those ratios if you're being super strict about it. But like I said, and this is one of the messages for everybody, vegans or not, you do have to add those veggies in, and there's tons of non-starchy veggies that you should and highly recommend you add anyways. But vegans, you would stick a lot to like coconut yogurts, coconut oils, olive oils. You can have some berries, like blackberries, blueberries, raspberries are lower in the sugar category, lower in the glycemic category. So those are things, even if you're not a vegan, you can add a little bit of. But again,
what do you say, a little bit, like a bowl or a cup, or how much do you think is per day? And does it matter what time of day
I would say
you take those berries?
My suggestion would be to eat any berries, even if you're a regular person, to do most of your fruit intake in the morning, so that you have the rest of your day to burn off that glucose. But I would say it depends on the person, how much it actually spikes their glucose levels. So you would have to do a little bit of self-evaluation. But I would say about a serving or two maximum a day of the berries in order to probably stay within your keto goals.
So yeah, it sounds like it's such an individual thing. So I would recommend everybody who's
100%.
watching, to go and find a nutritionist, a dietitian. You can contact Melanie, ask for her help, and have someone guide you and take you through the steps if you really want to do it, I think, the right way. We can always do self-experimenting, but I think having a guide and someone who knows what they're doing is one of the best solutions, because too many people are confused out there. And I think, like you said, it could go wrong. It could be damaging your organs. It could be, and this is not something that people talk about. They all talk about burning fat. So, so thank you so much, Melanie.
I think that's, you're welcome. I do think that, honestly, the diet and your relationship with food and the lifestyle that you have around food is incredibly personalized and individualized, because everyone's different, and the way that their bodies react to certain foods is very different, and it runs the gamut. So, just willy-nilly saying that this is, the diet I'm going to lead, it's very nuanced, and you should, consult somebody about that before heading on to it, for sure.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to let you go. We have a lot of excitement about, at least I do, about the next talk, which is paleo. And it's amazing. It's still around. People still talk about it. And it's been, it's one of those things I think people need a little bit more clarity on. I hope you guys who are watching that this is more clear. What does it mean to be on a keto diet? If you have any questions, please send them to me or to Melanie, and let us know if you have any topics that you want to cover the next time, or the ones after. Please send us a message. And the next Saturday, we're going to do an evening one for you guys in the States, so that we can hit some of our friends in Australia and Hong Kong, so who are not able to come on at this time because they're asleep. So thank you so much, Melanie. And
you're so welcome. I hope it was helpful. It's a nuanced answer, but I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, everybody go and give Melanie a shout out. Go and say hello. Send her a quick little message. Thank you after this, and encourage her to come on more and let us know what you want to hear next. Thank you, Melanie.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Zora. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.